The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. You know the names: conquest, war, famine, and death. It's a terrifying image, right? Probably one of the most powerful symbols of doom in all of human history, a sign that the world as we know it is about to end.
But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if the apocalypse isn't some external event that's coming for us, but an internal process that's happening within us? That's the whole idea we're exploring here, that these horsemen actually represent a predictable pattern, a pattern of consciousness. So let's trace it.
You see, the sequence here is incredibly specific. Each horseman doesn't just show up randomly. They actually give rise to the next one, creating this predictable downward spiral. So try to think of it less like a story and more like a psychological roadmap. It shows exactly what happens when a consciousness fights against its own awakening. And it all kicks off with conquest. Okay, so the first horseman rides a white horse. He looks righteous, he looks victorious, he kind of looks like a savior. But this victory, it's a really dangerous illusion.
This is where our whole understanding starts to shift. A lot of people interpret this rider as a holy figure, maybe a symbol of the gospel spreading. But this perspective, it turns that idea completely on its head. It suggests this rider is actually a counterfeit, a false light, an ego-driven ideology that pretends it has all the answers.
And here's the tiny detail that gives the whole game away. The rider is given a crown, right? A symbol of authority. He carries a bow, but it has no arrows. Now this detail is everything. It tells us that this conquest isn't one with actual power or substance, but with the threat of it. It's an empty, yet somehow incredibly powerful ideology.
So this conquest plays out in two ways. On the outside, you see it in these ideologies or movements that claim absolute moral superiority, that belief that we alone are right. But inwardly, it's the ego convincing itself that it has arrived. It's the ultimate spiritual trap, the ego dressing itself up as enlightenment.
So what happens next? Well, once a society or even just an individual gets captured by this false, absolute truth, the arrival of the second horseman is, well, tragically predictable, and that is conflict.
The red horse and its great sword, they really symbolize one thing: division. Because, think about it, when you believe we alone are right, then by definition, everyone else has to be wrong. Conflict isn't just a possibility anymore, it becomes a total inevitability. Peace is literally taken from the earth.
And just like before, this war happens on two fronts. Outwardly, we see it in the heartbreaking conflicts between nations, between religions, even within families. But all of that is really just a mirror for the inward reality, a soul at war with itself, desperately fighting any truth that challenges its rigid, black and white worldview.
Okay, so after conquest comes conflict. And after a system is just completely drained by endless fighting, the third horseman arrives. A whole new consciousness takes over: scarcity. The world is no longer a garden, it's a marketplace full of cold, hard transactions.
The key symbol here? A pair of scales. Life is no longer something to be honored, it's something to be measured, weighed, and priced. This is the cold logic of a survival-based system, where absolutely everything and everyone has a value you can put a number on.
This phrase is just so revealing. It means that basic food, the wheat, now costs a full day's wage. Just surviving is expensive. But then the voice says, do not harm the oil and the wine. In this interpretation, the oil and wine represent spirit and joy. So they still exist, but in a world of scarcity, they become these luxuries, untouched and completely inaccessible to most people.
This creates two different kinds of famine, happening at the same time. Outwardly, you get economic systems built on exploitation. But inwardly, there's a famine of the soul. Love starts to feel like a resource you have to ration, and any deeper sense of meaning becomes incredibly scarce. And so, we arrive at the final horseman. After the false victory, after the endless conflict, after the spiritual famine, there's really only one place left to go: the complete and total collapse of the old order.
The rider's name is simply Death, and Hades, the underworld, is following right behind him. But this isn't just about physical death. Inwardly, this represents what mystics sometimes call ego death. It's that painful, critical moment when the false self, the one built on ideology and conflict, just can't sustain itself anymore. It's a necessary clearing of the slate.
So it's really important to see death in two ways here. I mean, yeah, outwardly, it can be the collapse of a society or the end of an era. But its deeper, inward meaning is the collapse of that old, false identity. Because anything built on an illusion, it has to crumble eventually. It just has to.
Now, all of this has been leading up to one final, really powerful revelation. We've seen the whole pattern of collapse, right? But now we have to ask the most important question of all. What, or who, actually sets this whole thing in motion?
The common belief is that the horsemen are a punishment, sent down by an angry god to torment humanity for its sins. But what if that's not it at all? What if it's something else entirely?
Okay, here it is. This is the core insight of this entire interpretation. The horsemen are not a punishment. They are the natural consequence of a system resisting reality. In the text, it's the lamb, a symbol of pure, innocent truth, that opens the seals. So truth doesn't send the horsemen as a punishment, it simply shines a light on the brokenness that was always there. The chaos, that's just the system's violent reaction to being exposed.
And that leaves all of us with a profound, and let's be honest, a deeply challenging question. If this four-stage pattern is the inevitable result of resisting truth, it forces us to look at our own world and at our own lives, and ask the most uncomfortable question of all. What truths are we resisting right now?